Okay, it's a little bit after 12, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing, before we move to the approval of the minutes, we are recording, and hopefully, thank you. Hopefully, live streaming. So it's really important if you want to talk, make sure that your microphone is on so that A, it's recorded, and B, people who are watching on YouTube can hear everything that's being said. So that being said, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting? Yes. Any corrections? Motion to approve? All in favor? Okay, the motion or the minutes will be approved. Before I jump into the subcommittee reports, I would like to invite Judge Stevenson to come up because there is an announcement that everyone has seen, but I would like for her just to come up just to give a brief rundown of what that announcement is all about. She can join. Didn't see her back there, so. Okay. So press the little button on your thing and right here. Nope.
All right. Well, the judge called me yesterday morning to let me know that we got the $550,000 grant to start our mental health court. I attribute the fact that we were such heavy contenders for the grant to this body of support and guidance that I've had the whole way through. I feel like we're going to be successful because I have each one of you to come to when I have questions and issues. This is the hard work period is starting now. And I feel very fortunate. Dr. Russell has been such a big help with the grant, and she continues to agree to help me with the vision of this and putting the nuts and bolts together. So I'm going to meet with her next week to we want to get started and move forward on this. As I said before, I'm going to come to each of you individually and get your input and just any concerns you have or questions. I'd like to hear from each of you as to how you think this could best work. And of course, when we look at actually filling the positions and how we're going to do that, I'll need all of your help on that in terms of advice. So I'm very grateful to all of you for the support and just helping me see this through. It wasn't me, it was all of us. And the fact that we have this body that continues to work together from all different aspects of the criminal justice system, politely, respectfully, and trying to be creative here and try to solve this together. It means a lot to me. I think this group is special, and I've been very grateful for the help that I've gotten here. So thank you all very much.
Well, I just want to say we appreciate the extra work that you and Dr. Russell have put into this. This is fantastic news. So just one quick question. Time frame wise, go ahead. What's the next step?
So we had to really think about what the positions were going to be and some of the logistics of it, but right now it's going to put flesh on the bones. You know, we've got positions we're going to have to either hire for or find existing people that are going to be able to do a part-time job. So that I would say that'd be the next step is what do we need to hire for, creating the job descriptions. If we need outside funding for any of that, we need to start talking about that. I'm going to start, as I said, we'll be putting together a handbook, but we'll need to do that for the grant anyway. We have a year to plan that's contemplated in the grant. We don't have to take the whole year. It's certainly, I don't think, going to be something we're ready to do on January 1st. I wish we could do it that fast, but probably not. So I'll have a better idea once we get started as to how long this might take, and as long as you guys want reports, I'll keep coming to the meetings and let you know where we're at. So I'll keep you all abreast of what we're doing.
Yes, because, I mean, the other thing is whatever help you need from us, just let us know.
All right. I
And
appreciate that.
whatever we can do as a group to help get this thing off its feet or on its feet and up and running and continuing, I think we'll be more than happy to do.
I certainly don't expect I'm going to solve the sheriff's jail overcrowding problem with this, but my hope is that we're going to be able to target a very specific population that has been in the jail multiple occasions, keeps coming back in, and we've got a limited ability to address that right now. So this is adding services in that I think we all agree we need.
Yes.
So, all right,
Okay,
thanks so much.
thank you. Okay, next, subcommittee reports, and before I get into that, one thing, I have now been fully briefed on how to record meetings and hopefully live stream them and to add items to the county calendar. So I'm not on the program subcommittee, so whoever is on there, when you all schedule a meeting, if you will let me know, I can put it on the calendar and notify the public, and then I can come down here. I can let IT know, and I can come down here and we can start getting everything recorded. So we'll have that covered. So if you just let me know whenever y'all decide to have your meetings, I'll be happy to do that. So that being said, the program subcommittee met earlier this month. Judge Beaumont, did y'all have anything in particular to report?
So I believe we met September.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Let me turn that mic off and hit your, there you go.
All right. It's bad enough having to hear my voice, but now having to hear it on a microphone makes it worse. So I believe we had our meeting September 6th, if my notes are correct. We discussed that we were anxiously awaiting the news for the mental health court, which we have just heard from Judge Stevenson on. We talked a lot about kind of what we wanted to do with our subcommittee and to bring forward to the CJCC. We talked about looking at working with the legislature to work on some statutes right now that suspend driver's licenses for failure to pay. And we were going to reach out to district court judges and to the legislator to see if there's something that could be done in reference to that. Because obviously if people can't drive legally, they're going to continue to get arrested, and they will continue to rack up more fines and fees, and it just ends up being a cycle. We talked somewhat about the pretrial release that we are going to be presenting the proposal on today. We talked about the requirements for that. We talked about problems with transportation in reference to people trying to get to court. We talked a lot about the mental health concerns and in reference to people being left in jail trying to get mental evaluations, and then the long wait for the state hospital. And if they're found to be unfit, then there is a longer wait than to get them into the state hospital. So we were discussing different options and trying to get a lot of the stakeholders in reference to mental health together. So if we could find some maybe alternatives, like instead of having to wait months to go to the state hospital to be found help with their fitness, that maybe we could use resources like Northwest and local things that might give us more options. Whitney Payne is who is sitting here, and she is one of my law clerks for this semester. She's also a social work professor. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of got like the treasure prize when she became our law clerk, because I kind of got a 2-for-1. So she is the individual who has been working on the pretrial, and her next project is also going to be working on getting all of the different mental health organizations together so that we can all meet in one room. And I'm hoping that Judge Stevenson, and maybe I can convince Judge Taylor and Judge Lindsay to even be involved, and prosecutors and public defenders, and try to see if we can get everyone in one room and see if all these smart individuals can come up with some better plans.
Okay. All right. We being the pretrial subcommittee, there was no court subcommittee meeting this month, but pretrial subcommittee met last Friday. We had a presentation from Ms. Payne in reference to pretrial services program, and we talked about a couple other things, the expansion of the ankle monitoring program the jail's doing. Those are the two big things we talked about. So that being said, we have placed on the agenda a discussion of the proposal that has been brought about. So Judge Beaumont, I don't know if you want to do it, or Ms. Payne, to kind of run through for everybody, for the committee and for everybody else, the proposal that has been brought together, and I'll let whoever wants to run with it can run with it.
So I will start, because Whitney has kind of threatened me that if I throw her under the bus again, I did at the pretrial
and
meeting.
she did a fantastic job at the pretrial subcommittee meeting. She did a great job, because we were really peppering her with questions, and so she did fantastic. So she shouldn't be nervous about jumping in.
Okay, all right, I'm live. All right. So I'm just going to kind of try to go through the basics, and I have folders if anyone wants to look and kind of see what we're talking about. Now, Whitney has updated. There's 2 extra sheets based on some suggestions that were made to us by Judge Deakins. And so if anyone afterwards would like a copy, we're not trying to hide anything. This is not top secret material. So what we are basically trying to do is we are trying to not recreate the ball, so to speak. We want to replicate what is occurring in other jurisdictions that is working and is being effective. And whenever, and FYI, Whitney did this entire thing, just so y'all know, okay? She spoke to anyone and everyone that would talk to her. She has reached out to people nationally. She has reached out to most, if not all, of the people that would be involved in this here. So I cannot stress enough of this is all her. I am just the spokesperson. So basically, what we would be asking the CJCC to vote on today would be to move forward with this pre-services proposal. And then I would ask, that we then present it to the quorum court. With this proposal, we would start out looking at 2 case manager positions. The cost for those, for a basic case manager with fringe benefits for each one, would be a little under $60,000 per case manager. Obviously, if we get some individuals that apply that are, super qualified and have lots of experience, that salary might vary based on the, I think it was grade 12. But that's like the baseline, what we're talking about. What we're asking for would cost the county under $200,000. There would be some requirements to have probably someone either at UAMS or the university to be able to look at the data and evaluate it. We would also need a database, which, what were we thinking the cost was on that?
So tentatively, we've looked into a program called RedCap that I think is used through UAMS, and it can be no or low cost. We would just have to probably outsource someone to set up the program for us, but it could house all of the data and assessment tools.
And I think you said it's about $4,000 that you were thinking for someone to run the program.
An evaluator, you just have to, it could be variable depending on how long we would want to utilize their services. So most, tenure track professors are going to need a buyout of a course a semester, which would be around $4,000 or $5,000. Just fair compensation for their time.
Is that a semester or is that a month or?
That would be a semester. And again, it'd be variable. And sometimes they can find grants to cover some of those evaluation costs. There are a lot of people who get grants for program evaluation within the School of Social Work in particular. So I think that would be something that we could look into to offset the cost. It's just not guaranteed.
So the basics of the program would make it so that the two case managers would do an assessment on individuals as they were coming into the jail. That would give them the assessment that we would be giving them is a free assessment, so there's no cost except for either typing it in the program or the paper if we had to use paper. And then basically what that would do it would put them basically into different categories as far as this category is the one where we have no fear that they are going to recidivate, no fear that they're going to failure to appear based on the factors that we're looking at, and those are the individuals that we want to get out of the jail as quick as possible. Those are the ones that we would say, hey, let's release them on their own recognizance and give them their court date. Steadily as you go up, there would be different requirements of the individuals as far as what would need to be done to them based on how they assessed. So say for someone, when they assess that they do show up to court, they don't have any failure to appears, but they do have a substance abuse problem. So that person's going to be put on a little higher level of pretrial services and will be referred to substance abuse treatment, outpatient services. So that way it could be mental health, it could be substance abuse, whatever it is, to go ahead and try to get them into those services. And then obviously, when you get to, there's going to be individuals that the case managers are not going to take their time to assess, like someone who's charged with capital murder, someone who's charged with serious violent felonies. Those are not the individuals that we are looking to try to get out of the jail. We are trying to get the individuals out of the jail that we do not believe are going to recidivate and the individuals that we think will show up to court. We can also, it will incorporate the ankle monitoring system, which we are already using. We are also looking to get as much free labor as possible, which Whitney has already talked to the social work department. I know I already have a social work extern working at drug court. They are very happy and they need externships in the community, and this would be an excellent way in order to get them some real world experience and to get us some no-cost labor. So one of the things that Whitney found in her studies was that calling people and reminding them of their court date is the most effective way in order to get them not to fail to appear. The majority of people who are not showing up to court, it's because they forgot, they don't have transportation. There are certain factors that are common, but if they know about it and have time to prepare for it, it makes it much more likely that they're going to show up to court. One of the examples of how this program works in a different jurisdiction, but it is a comparable jurisdiction. There is St. Mary's County in Maryland, which has a population of about 114,000. The demographics are like Washington County. They did this program initially to avoid their jail was overcrowded by 50%. They had dramatic results. 99% of participants were appearing for all court appearances in the first year. Within the first year, 200 people were released from the jail and cut their numbers into pretrial services programming. Of those, 77% remain compliant with the terms of their release with no new violations. It helped release their jail population by 33%. And it actually saved the county a total of $594,000 in its first year. And their cost for startup, like what we're looking at, was no more than $200,000. So these little things, I think, could make a huge difference. I also have been awarded 3 more peer support specialists, and are looking hopefully to go before the quorum court next month to get that approved. And then I would like to offer up either one of those to the pretrial services program if we can get the quorum court on board, or some of mine part-time, because some of mine really are interested in doing the pretrial services, and so they've asked if they can kind of help out there also, which I think is great. Questions, comments for Whitney?
Actually, you answered some of the questions that I had, because one of the questions is about the peer support specialists. Because right now, I think we would like to have as big a program as possible, but I think we need to be realistic in what we do in terms of cost and everything else, and walk before we run. I think I don't know. I don't want to speak for everyone. These are just my thoughts. If this can kind of looked at as a pilot program to see how well it works, because I don't know how realistic it is to think that we're going to have 200 people walking out the first day.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so I think we need to look at, I mean, I've gone through the numbers, and I go through the numbers as frequently as I can. And right now, we have people in jail. There are a lot of people in jail that I would not be comfortable with being in this program. And so going through the checklist, whatever you want to call it, from the I think it's the Advancing Pretrial Policy and Research Group. That's where we're getting the matrix from. Is that correct? Okay. And then going through the proposal, I did have questions about violent felonies, because, and I'm glad to hear that we're gonna put a limit on who we look at, because there's a difference between someone who gets arrested for an aggravated assault versus someone who gets arrested for aggravated residential burglary. And I don't want them lumped in the same category and getting the same number of points toward the matrix, because I think we can all agree those are two drastically different people that we're looking at. And I also had concerns about sex offenders, because I don't think those people are appropriate for pretrial services. That's my opinion. So I'm not speaking for anybody else. It's just my opinion. So what we're looking at here, what we ultimately present, if we can agree on something that we can present to the quorum court for approval, we're not going to have is it safe to say we're not going to have every detail figured out? It's going to be get it approved and figure out details as we go along, because I mean I've got several questions about things that the minutia of the program, not the program itself. I think this idea of the program itself is fantastic. It's just
My goal is to be able to answer as many of those questions and get those figured out before I present it to the quorum court. So, like, we've already come up with questions on as far as where would they be housed. So,
Right.
So we have been in negotiations with the sheriff to see if there's a spot that he could find for us there. The other question would be, who would be supervising these case managers? So, I was speaking to the sheriff about these case managers are going to either have to be provided information about someone's criminal history, or they will have to have access to ACIC and CIC.
that was another one of my questions.
Which means that they would either have to work for the sheriff or be supervised by the sheriff or the prosecutor's office in order to have ACIC and CIC access, unless there was someone at y'all's office that could just provide the information as far as, hey, this is their history. So that's something that I think us, the public defender, the other judges would have to kind of sit down and discuss, and then see who's willing, and then make sure that it allows these case managers to have the information that they need.
Because my big concern is I want personally, and I don't know that, I mean, if anyone disagrees with it, that's fine. I want to get something at least moved on as quickly as possible, but
Yes.
I don't want something rushed. But as long as we can, the analogy I used at the pretrial subcommittee is that it's like when you're building a house, and you know you as long as we're looking at you know we're talking about the construction of the home, and I'm talking about the color of the walls and the fixtures in the bathroom, just making sure that we can go back and fill in the blanks of things about you know who we're going to partnership with for transportation, because that's an important thing, because there are people out there who fail to appear because they don't have a ride. I mean that's an explanation that's given, and I'm not going to tell people that they're not telling the truth and they said they couldn't find a ride. So, I mean, transportation is always a big issue. And obviously community partners, connecting with someone to provide substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment, or whether it's job training or housing issues. I want to make sure that what we're passing on, we're passing on the general idea, the general proposal, the big picture, and we're going to figure out details as we go along. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yes, but I would like to have as many as those details
Absolutely.
figured out before the quorum court.
I don't want to give them just a big vague picture.
Yes.
I want to, because you look at it, I think that if we pass something on to the quorum court, I don't want them to have questions about how it's going to work. They may have questions about, is it going to work? But the fewer questions they have about how we're going to make this thing work, how we're going to ensure people get to court, who's going to be making these calls, who's going to be giving them rides, who's going to be providing these services, the more the better. I think the details that we can maybe save till later are what things are, what individuals are off limits to pretrial services. Things like that, how much weight we give certain things, how much weight we give other things. Those are kind of details I think we can wait for. So, let me mute.
We need a
So,
bleep.
I don't know the number of people that have like ACC holds based on they were on supervision when they caught the charge, and would that limit them from being a part of the pretrial services, or would there be a way to kind of factor that in to where information goes back to ACC at some capacity and say, hey, we're considering this person for pretrial services, but we see they're being held on your end. How does that work? Because I know a lot of them are in that situation.
I think we'd have to distinguish what kind of supervision they were on. If they're on probation in jail for a probation revocation, that decision could be made locally here. If they're on parole, it does kind of complicate things because they are governed by the Board of Parole. So the answer is possibly they could be considered for it. I guarantee you it'll be a case-by-case basis. The parole board might want to impose their sanctions first and then allow the person. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying we'd have to ask on every one of them.
Well, before you turn your mic off, let me ask you a question that I've asked before and I think I know the answer to. If you've got two of these case managers, I think you said realistic caseload is about 40 to 50 people per
In specialty
manager?
courts, yes, that's an ideal number.
I mean, I don't want to overload them because that's going to hurt the effectiveness.
Right.
But I want to utilize them as best we can.
Right. You know, especially cases, which I would consider this kind of a specialty case, we're pretrial, right? We're not post-adjudication dealing with them.
Right.
40, 50 is a great number to work with. It's easy to keep track of them. You get 60, 70, 80, 100, it's really easy to lose a person. You know, there's only so many hours in a day, and I don't know if the county wants to pay a bunch of overtime or anything like that. So I could see it doing, 100 people with two.
With two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this on? One thing that I've come to really appreciate about pretrial services is that they have been shown effective in pretty much any kind of setting. So they've been used in rural areas of states, they've been used in counties, cities. The whole state of Kentucky now uses pretrial services. DC has a really robust pretrial services program. And so I tried to include examples from all those places. And I guess my whole point in saying this is that the programs are incredibly customizable for where you're located. And so that was kind of what you were talking about with like the faucets and the paint color, is that you can customize the public safety assessment to exclude certain people automatically. You can change kind of the risk level and then write into the matrix exceptions, or like the case manager could kind of get the details or the story that the person has. And so, you can make it work for your locale. So I really want to emphasize that. And then I want to say that the stipulations of release are going to vary per person and risk level. So some people are only going to require, court date reminders and maybe a monthly check-in and then a monthly criminal background check just to make sure that they're not getting into any other trouble. And that might be it. While others are going to have higher, risk and so more stipulations. And so the burden on the case manager will vary across client that's involved in the program. So that's something we have to factor in as well. In some areas, they've created specialized case managers who take on the ones who have greater stipulations, but we would probably look at that in the future if we're able to expand the program.
Oh, so sorry. You want to go ahead? I was just going to say the 40 based on that Parker's talking about is based on high risk, high need. So those would be your higher people, whereas these individuals we're hoping are going to be working with more of the low risk, low need individuals. So they would not take up near as much time and could handle more people.
Kristen?
Well, I'll let you
Oh.
go. Well, I was just going to speak to your point. I think it can be really customizable. I think pretrial services that I've seen in other areas, you know, there was that level of case manager where you kind of had somebody that was a lower level case manager, somebody that was specialized that would provide transportation to court. So, I mean, we could be looking at our case managers to provide those additional services as well, and peer support to be providing some of that transportation. You know, we don't want that to be the end-all be-all, like that's the only thing they do. However, I do think some of that can be built in. So I think just to echo that point of, we probably want to look at a leveling system of, you know, someone that's a tier 1 versus someone that's a tier 4, and what services they receive from their case manager.
Judge?
And this program or these services are purely provided on a voluntary basis, correct?
Correct. I mean,
The detainee has to ask for the services and consent to participate in the services.
and they would have to sign stipulations of release. So it is, I mean, people will get screened and they would be offered the opportunity to participate in pretrial services. So no one's being forced to do it. But they would also have to abide by certain conditions, whatever conditions that the grid or the matrix or their score or whatever determines is necessary for their release.
Okay, just making sure.
And I wanted to add to that, a lot of the programs, again, going back to customizable, so it would be voluntary to participate in pretrial services. If they're given stipulations for release that are just court date reminders and things like that, those would not be voluntary if they were participating in pretrial services for their release OR. But additional treatment interaction would be voluntary in most of the programs. So participating in substance use disorder treatment or mental health treatment or those other needs-based programs would be a voluntary part of it. And that's what they've done in other programs.
And there are also with the sliding scale you talked about that, you know, based on their score they're given or whatever score they get, there may be more restrictions, and that includes contact with the case manager, because some people, just like with probation, some people have monthly check-ins, some people have check-in every 3 months, some people have check-in every 2 weeks, depending on you know, the risk, the assessment, and on or their risk of mainly not appearing or getting into more trouble, correct? And so some of these could be, okay, you need to call in once a week or text me once a week, or sometimes it may be actual face-to-face, however. So it's just a sliding scale of different types of, for lack of a better term, supervision, you know, management based on their risk level, correct? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
The reason I'm asking about the voluntariness of it is, and I'm very much in favor of these pretrial services, and I want this program to work. However, when it comes to someone's release on their own recognizance, and if they have consented to participate in the program and then they don't participate in the program, there need to be those criminal procedure rule restrictions built into the program as automatic conditions of release, because we're bound by, we judges are, and the prosecutors and the defense attorneys are bound to follow the Arkansas rules of criminal procedure if there is a motion to revoke the OR status or to take them back in custody. So we need to be really careful about what they are told upon their OR release. Because honestly, if they say, yes, I want all the services that I qualify for, and then they totally blow off the pretrial services, if we don't have the right orders in place as conditions for the release itself, then getting them back in when they have violated or failed to appear, or failed to appear is easy, but if they have violated the other conditions, if they had contact with a victim that they'd been told not to have contact with, or if they, well, if there were any other conditions and they violated those, then court-imposed conditions, if they weren't given proper notice of those, then it'd be hard to get them back into the fold.
And this may help, you can jump in after that. I mean, I think that we could fashion, fashion an agreement for entry into the program that they understand that that their admission into the program is conditioned upon them abiding by certain conditions, and failure to do so could result in their release being revoked and maybe even providing some, I don't know if we can fashion that they're waiving their right to, I don't know, we're getting a little tricky there, but I mean, we can work on that, on some type of release order that's filed and whatnot, because, I mean, you look in, Criminal Rule 9.1 contemplates these things. Contemplates a lot of these things, a judge ordering these things, such as someone being supervised to make sure that they show up, or that they're restricted in their movements, with an ankle monitor, or that there are other restrictions on there. So it's contemplated by it. I think we just need to, that's another detail we'd have to come up with, is the type of document that, a type of agreement that the individual would sign, and what it's going to say, and what we can put in there that doesn't run afoul of the criminal procedures. Because last thing, I mean, obviously, I'm not going into this being pessimistic that that we're going to have 2/3 of these people not complying, but I mean, obviously, the last thing that, or one of the last things that our office needs is to have to file a bunch of revocation motions. We did that during COVID when we were releasing people on monitors and they weren't abiding by the monitors. We're doing tons of those, and that takes up a lot of our time, takes a lot of the court's time, and whatnot. So I think we just need to, that can come down to figuring out how to do the agreement paperwork before they're released. So go ahead, you can.
Okay, and that was a customizable part of most of the programming too. And, it's not probation, but it follows a very similar structure. And I think the case managers kind of evaluate it like probation officers do. And there has to be some agreement on like how much wiggle room there is, So if a person doesn't check in because they forgot, because they have this this pattern, then that might not be grounds for revocation. But if they don't follow any of the stipulations, or if they're higher level risk, but there has to be informed consent from the client to participate in the program.
And we can request all the forms, I would think, from Maryland and Kentucky, the ones that already, and kind of go off of theirs and at least start there.
I'm not on the pretrial services committee, and I'm not saying that I want to be on the pretrial services committee. However, I am available to look over forms, or to discuss any issues that might arise as far as putting them together. And I love to make forms, so I'm happy to help with that, to get a comprehensive, cohesive form that the court, an order that the court would sign as far as releasing someone on their own recognizance, and that had as a stipulation to participate in the pretrial services program, so. You're hired. I figured I was, but anyway, just let me know. Like I said, I don't need any more meetings that I have to go to. I just am willing to help.
Kristen?
Well, and I wonder too if we can look to, Judge Bowman, I know with drug court, individuals coming to the CSU from your court, there's sometimes some, us being a voluntary facility, I think we can look to what you've been doing with drug court as well, and just kind of navigating that to some extent. Because it is important that we need to maintain, it being voluntary. I think there's a lot of buy-in when you make it that way, and it needs to be that way, because again, this is not probation. And so, I think just encouraging that voluntary basis, but as you mentioned, having that informed consent on the front end of, if these specific things are not followed, and I think we need to be really specific about what those are, because we are going to have instances of, gosh, I forgot, or it was my kid's birthday and I didn't make it to court, or whatever it is, right? And we need to have that wiggle room. So I think having those specific instances that we can look to as guidance, and so that they know that on the front end, is very, very important. But we need to emphasize the voluntary nature of it. Obviously, I'm a proponent of that because the CSU being voluntary, and that works for us, and I think it'll work for this as well, so.
Other questions? Anyone? Okay.
I make a motion for us to present this proposal and move it forward to the court.
Second. Okay. Okay. Discussion. I mean, we've had a lot of discussion so far, but most of them are questions. But Judge, go ahead.
The proposal itself, what is contained in this purple notebook?
For the most part, yes, but obviously, based on what we talked about, there are still a few things that need to be kind of figured out as far as where they would be housed and who would supervise them and those kind of things. And so I'm just asking today for the permission, and I will tell you, I mean, my intention with going to the court is that to go with the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office, the sheriff, and with you and Judge Lindsay's approval for the final say-so before it goes to them, because those are the areas that it affects the most.
I think that, ultimately, what we present would probably, and J.P. Coger can correct me if I'm wrong, would have to be in the form of an ordinance that would just have to be written so that we have specifics, as opposed to, just handing them a blue notebook and saying, here's what it is. I think that's probably the most appropriate way to do that. That can be figured out. I'm not saying that's an impediment right now. I can be figured out, because I think we'd have to present them with the specifics of it, and not typically everything in here, but I think we could figure that out on how that's written up, but I think that what we would be doing is, let's assuming that we approve this, that we would be taking portions from this that everyone has been looking at, that's been passed around, taking the major portions from this and fashioning an ordinance, whatever's necessary to present to the quorum court.
I mean, I think the big part would be requesting the 2 case managers and then the funds for whatever office equipment that they're going to need, and then the funds for the red cap, if there is a cost for it, and then for UAMS or a professor or someone to run the red cap program.
And I think go ahead, Judge.
Well, I was just gonna say, my experience with presenting things to the quorum court, and I try not to do that as much, I try to do that as little as possible. But where the rubber hits the road is the money. So it seems to me that what we need to present to the quorum court is sort of a broad strokes. We want to establish the pretrial services program and are asking for a budget of X amount of money, which we would come back to present the breakdown of the budget at another time. You know, the detailed budget, but we would like to have authority to go ahead and start working on this I mean, if it's $250,000, if it's $200,000, and this is what we think it's gonna be spent on. And because what's the point of going to all the work to put together the specifics of the program if they're not gonna fund it? So then when we do have the specifics of how the program works, X amount and we can give some estimates in our initial presentation, this much for the social workers, this much for this service, this much for using this form. So we are asking for a budget of up to this amount, and we will come back later and present that budget for approval. And maybe that's backwards. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to do it that way, but it seems like that's what we've done with our departmental budgets in presenting to Budget and Finance, and then it will be presented to the full quorum court. So, but the money is the linchpin to the whole program.
And I know that Whitney had a discussion with the Bureau of Prisons, and essentially what they said is they don't provide money for what we're looking at. They provide money for what's kind of been done already, is they provide money to bring someone in to set the program up and then kind of shove you down the road, and then they step back.
They provide training. So once we got people hired, and they would provide training for also the stakeholders also. So they would be able to provide that for free.
They just don't provide funding for positions. They'll train those people, tell them how it works, and tell them everything else, but they don't provide funding for the positions. I've done some research on my own and haven't found anything yet, but I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously not an expert in grants and other types of federal
Nor am
funding
I.
and whatnot, but I haven't been able to find anything myself.
So I've been reaching out to members of the court, and from what I understand, I would need to go to the, other committee meeting that kind of handles everything, and then they would be able to ask questions, kind of present a proposal, and then, yes, would ask them to go in front of the full court in order to request the money in order to do it. So I think it is a two-step process. I think you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Any more discussion? Okay, even though this isn't an official body that's policy-making body, I think it would be appropriate at this time to get input, public comment before we take a vote. So, anyone have public comment? Just hit that, I think it's on the right, the button on the right. There you go. And you're on, just let us know your name and where you're from.
Hal Henson, Farmington. And first of all, I want to say congratulations, Judge Stevenson and everyone on the mental health court. Big deal, day of Jubilee. So beds, transportation, and money. That's how I have been hearing this for a while. My wife and I have just completed the establishment of a nonprofit in Farmington to provide beds, housing for all kinds of needs. and particularly those who have housing insecurity. But when I was here before, I kept hearing transportation, transportation. And what I said to the group and others is that our model, we feel like where we are in Farmington, we have to provide transportation. And we will not be asking for your money. We want to take a small bite out of your need and the need of these people. And it's privatized. It's not coming out of my back pocket alone because I don't have it. But what we do have is a common goal. And so while you guys have been doing what y'all been doing, we've had some donations, not big ones. But I put a new battery in a 2011 van this week. That was out of my pocket. But we have that. But a big issue for us is when you're providing transportation, as the sheriff knows, there's a budget item in your insurance policy that's much bigger than the normal. And so there's a lot of those issues that we're trying to work out. But if it helps you in making a decision, I want you to know that, and we are working toward providing solutions, not just housing and beds, but also transportation in the east-west corridor. And we think we can provide a model and a pilot program to help with that. And so we've been working on that, literally securing those things. And then finally, I will tell you that I personally will come to the quorum court, and I will speak in favor of this as a citizen and a potential provider to make this happen. But I will also continue to say that there is money that has been spent and will continue to be asked for that goes in other directions that might want to be considered to come in this direction, not for me, but for this program. And I'll continue to speak for that. So anyway, again, I appreciate you and your time, and I'm going to go meet with an investor to look at a property here in just a few minutes. So. We potentially can do the 1st of December for men, 5 beds for men. Our home inspection got delayed by a week by an electrical outage last week in Farmington, right in the middle of the home inspection. It's not our ideal model, but it gets us on the way, and the price is right. And so anyway, we're making progress, and so we would love to provide many beds and much transportation for this program and others. So I just want to be clear, this is not provided just for you, but we would be glad to participate. Matter of fact, our model really doesn't work when you have all the people from the same place. We like to mix them. And so at least that's what we believe is best. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're not on. Hit the. There you go.
Good. Good afternoon, Josh Moody, Fayetteville. I'd like to echo the congratulations on the mental health court. And thank those putting the legwork in to make that happen, bring that closer to reality. Thank you very much to the research and proposal you put together. I'm excited to hear that there's seems to be general consensus about putting some type of pretrial services program forward. And I'd like to reiterate a couple of things that were mentioned. This has been discussed in this body for about 18 months or so. It's been discussed in some capacity in the county for over 3 years. So my hope is, yes, I think county services would need to hear about it first. I think, and I also think it makes sense that it would make sense to have the money in place before working out all the details. I'm glad that there was lots of discussion on the details today. I think there will be time after approval to work those kinks out and make sure that everybody's happy with the program moving forward. The next county services committee meeting is this Monday. Assuming this body does vote to propose it towards the quorum court, I'm hoping that that's in place by this coming Monday, so that hopefully the full quorum court can put it forward, in October, and we can really get the ball rolling on it. Because I do believe it will, assuming things are still going as it will go through county services, then finance the following week, and then quorum court the following week. So thank you all for talking about this. I'm hopeful we're getting closer. keep up the good work, and I hope that if we agree to move forward with this, there is a sense of urgency to get it to get that ordinance to that body on Monday. Thank you.
Any other before we take a vote? Okay, I mean, I think we need to point out one thing, that we are missing some people, but I mean, does anyone have an issue? I know Judge Lindsey's not here, but he had previously stated that he was in favor of this proposal. I know Leanna's not here, and I know Laura Tyler's not here. I don't think of anybody else off the top of my head that's not here. But we've got a motion and a second on the table, so just want to throw that out there. So, that being said, all those in favor of submitting this proposal to start the process with the quorum court, I guess is the best way to pass this on to the quorum court and get that process going through whatever committees it needs to go to. So, all those in favor of this proposal, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Then we'll get to work on fashioning something in ordinance form or however it needs to be done, and get the process rolling on that. So, next order of business, additional business. Nick, you can, hold on, let me take some people off here. You asked for some time, so the floor is yours.
All right. First of all, just kind of give some context. It was about 3 years ago when things were transitioning from this group meeting based on the different facilities and stuff that needed, and then transitioned into what is the CJCC. I had an opportunity to speak with then Judge Woods, and I requested, as somebody that at the age of 17 years old was formerly incarcerated, to be a part of that, and very honored that he placed me on here. The last 3 years have been great. Got to meet all of you, and I would say it's been very informative for my understanding of the judicial system, and helped me lead my nonprofit Returning Home even better. The workload for my organization is continually to increase, which means things are going well, which leads me to need to step off this board after 3 years. Definitely here if there's any questions or anything I could help with, small projects. Also, I think it gives an opportunity for the committee to have a fresh voice, and somebody that, you know, is excited about what we're doing can jump on here and take my spot. I personally believe the person that should do that is now going to be starting another court, so that may not be feasible. I think she's busy, but ultimately really appreciate all of you and the work that you're doing, and been honored to work beside you on the committee, as well as just our dealings with the justice involved people we serve in our counties. So thank you so much.
Nick, I hate to see you go, but, you know, understand the rationale behind it and the reasoning. Can't thank you enough for all the work that you've put into this. You've been invaluable to this committee, and so we're sad to see you go, but glad that things are working out well enough that you need to step back and you need to find more time to focus on returning home and everything else. So you will definitely be missed, and you are very much, very, very appreciated for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
So thanks for giving us your time and your work and your effort and everything else. That being said, we're running way over, but nevertheless, we still have 12 minutes for public comment. So limited to 3 minutes per person, total of 12 minutes. So does anyone want to provide any public comment at this time? And if you would, just tell us your name and where you're from, and you'll need to hit the button on there, I think on the right. And You're up.
Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm Gracie. I live off Chestnut Avenue here in Fayetteville. First, I just want to put it out there that I first started coming to these in May, and to watch the progress from May to now has been incredible. This feels like an entirely different body than the meetings that I was coming to in May, and that's because of all of you, and that's because of the work that all of y'all have done in making this body something that is seeing progress, especially with pretrial services and also with the mental health court. I'm super excited to see both of those come to fruition, and they're both something that I think will really alleviate, not all, certainly, but some of the pressure we're seeing in our county. And then the only other thing, small thing, is I really want to get a date on the books for the warrant failure to appear in November. We had that for November 7th. That day won't work out. And I just want to bring that to the attention of folks on this body who will definitely be involved in that, to let y'all know that's something that AJRC is definitely willing to coordinate, something we've already received a lot of interest in. A lot of groups have reached out to us. Individuals have reached out to us to have one of those. And so I just want to reiterate my support for that clinic that we hold and hope we can get a date on the books for November.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so if there's no objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.